Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. So good to have you with us on this Tuesday evening here on the East Coast. We're broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. For those of you who were with us earlier on in the day for our live coverage of SpaceX's static fire test out at Launch Complex 39A with the different Falcon 9 rocket, welcome back. If this is your first live stream with us today, welcome in. Hope you've had a good one, and we appreciate you stopping by. SpaceX is currently about 59.5 minutes away from the planned liftoff of this Falcon 9 that you see there at Space Launch Complex 40 over on the Cape side. On board are 28 Starlink V2 mini satellites, the mission Starlink 10-29. Today's Falcon flight set to be the 93rd for the mission for the company so far this year, and the 510th Falcon 9 launch to date. As we're settling in, I want to thank the nearly 800 of you who are watching along with us live at this point in the countdown. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream, allowing some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. Also want to thank our moderators in the live chat for helping us out tonight. So we've got Rick Donner on tap at the moment. I believe Astro Joe said he was going to be circling back with us this evening, so keep your eyes peeled for him, as well as any of the other moderators that happen to step on in during the course of the countdown. You can help make the moderator's job that much easier just by following the rules of the chat. We ask that you refrain from delving into overt politics and religion, and that you don't type using all caps. Also, that you converse in English so that our moderators can respond as appropriate. And last but certainly not least, that you treat each other with the kindness and respect that you yourself would like to be treated. Also, not seeing him in the chat at the moment, but believe one of our channel members, Cumulus Granatus, is also hanging around with us tonight to help answer folks' questions in the live chat. Speaking of channel members, if you have a comment or question about this mission, we'll be on the hunt for channel member comments, but want to thank our member community broadly for helping to support our live launch coverage, first and foremost. Thanks to folks like Mark Pachotnik, The Rocket Girl, Sulfur for Lunch, Ryan Snyder, Butterfly, and many others. Grandpa Jim Pondu, hello. Glenn A, hello, hello. General membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, which is shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. Speaking of members, I want to thank Mark Pachotnik for gifting a Spaceflight Now membership. Really appreciate that, Mark. And to our newest gifted channel member, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. Be sure to thank Mark in the live chat if you haven't already, and we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership. Last little bit of housekeeping here. If you have a comment or question, or just want to offer a little bit of support tonight, like Glenn A just did, you can use the YouTube Super Chat feature. And not only will you be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we cruise on through the count, but you'll also be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now, and that, my friends, is greatly appreciated. Time now T minus 54 minutes, 3 seconds and counting. Heading into this launch opportunity, the 45th Weather Squadron forecast a pretty good weather outlook for today's Falcon 9 flight. Meteorologists put the odds at favorable weather at 90%, with just some slight concerns for interference from cumulus clouds. Liftoff winds trending between 10 to 15 miles per hour was the prediction, although take a look at that American flag there in the upper right-hand corner of your screen just beneath the countdown clock. A little bit breezy on the Space Coast tonight. As we're getting things rolling, though, I'd be remiss if we got any further without mentioning that we are also joined with tracking assistance this evening by our friends Pete Karstens with Max Q Productions, as well as Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images. Taking a look at their camera view and their vantage point on the Falcon 9 rocket. Tonight's Falcon 9 is going to be flying in a northeasterly trajectory once it heads off from the pad there at Space Launch Complex 40. Just about 15 minutes ago, the Brevard County Emergency Operations Center activated in support of this launch attempt tonight. Brevard EOC, one of the busiest emergency operations centers in the country, because they do activate whenever there is a launch opportunity. And of course, being here in Florida, they're also busy with other potential natural disasters and other emergency responses. We are, of course, in the midst of hurricane season right now. And while there's nothing at the moment, knock on wood, that's in the impending path of the Florida Peninsula, our thoughts are going out tonight to all of those who are directly or potentially impacted from that 8.8 magnitude earthquake that occurred off the coast of Russia and has created tsunami watches and warnings in several parts of the globe, including all along the west coast of the United States and in Hawaii. Coming back to tonight's mission, the planned liftoff time of this Falcon 9 rocket is set for 11:37 p.m. Eastern, 03:37 UTC. As long as SpaceX hasn't begun fueling its Falcon 9 rocket, though, it does have additional launch times available to it across a roughly 4-hour launch window. However, we did see some venting about an hour and it's about an hour and 15 minutes ahead of the planned T0, which is certainly a good indication that SpaceX is in position to launch on time. So not 100% that you can take that to the bank, as those of you who are with us for the static fire test earlier today can certainly attest. If you're watching Launchpad Live, you would have noticed that there were a couple of times earlier in the day where we saw some venting from the strong back. Bring these live pictures up over at 39A. You can see the Falcon 9 rocket still standing tall. A couple of times where it looked like we were getting in the groove and they just weren't quite ready, but they did have what, by all accounts, was a good static fire. SpaceX says they are still on target for a launch coming up on Thursday at 12:09 p.m. Eastern, 16:09 UTC from that there pad. 3 astronauts, 1 cosmonaut from the Crew 11 mission are spending their final hours here on Earth before they go ahead and launch on a long duration mission up to the International Space Station. Mission currently planned for 6 months in total, but NASA and the international partners are discussing the potential to extend it out to 8 months for a nominal mission, and that would be in order to match what Roscosmos has been planning to pivot to, as well as to address some potential budget considerations, as the proposed FY26 budget would notably reduce the budget for the International Space Station and the science that's conducted therein. Of course, the budgetary process goes on in Washington. No final answer on that yet, but of course, many options are being weighed at this point in time. Coming back to tonight's mission, though, we are T-minus 48 minutes, 18 seconds, and counting. Just about 10 minutes away from the point in which the SpaceX launch director is set to make the call on the start of prop load. Generally speaking, that happens at the T-minus 38-minute mark, but SpaceX feels like they're in a good position to do so. They can make the call on the start of prop load just a little bit earlier than that. Before we go ahead and jump into the fueling timeline, want to make sure that you're following our photography crew on X. Got everyone out in force tonight. Adam is manning the live cameras and preparing to do some still photography as well. Michael Caine also out and about on the Space Coast, preparing to shoot the Falcon 9 rocket. John Pisani is working with our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, to run the technical operations of the broadcast. You can see the handles that they have here on the screen. That's where you can find them on their profiles on X. Also be sure to follow Spaceflight Now simply at Spaceflight Now. We're on X, of course, as well as Blue Sky, Threads, and Facebook. Pivoting to the countdown timeline, as we just mentioned, T-minus 38 minutes is when SpaceX, generally speaking, makes the call on the start of prop load. Once that go-ahead is granted, fueling of the Falcon 9 rocket will begin at T-minus 35 minutes with the loading of RP-1, a rocket-grade kerosene, on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages. At the same time, liquid oxygen will begin flowing on board the Falcon 9's first stage. T-minus 30 minutes is when they start to load a cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels for the Falcon 9's first stage. Same is true on the second stage shortly thereafter. That helium is important, of course, because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. T-minus 23 minutes is when the second stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is when the strong back chill down process begins. You see this visually manifest as the so-called big vent. It's when SpaceX is preparing those feed lines ahead of second stage liquid oxygen load. Following a roughly 4-minute venting process, we'll see that LOX begin to flow at about T-minus 16 minutes. We are just about T-minus 45 minutes to the planned liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. Next milestone in the countdown is the engine chill, which begins at 7 minutes out. SpaceX will flow a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and the turbo pumps of the 9 Merlin engines. That'll help protect them from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. 6 minutes before flight, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. And at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract sequence. It starts with the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings opening up, and then the transporter erector, otherwise referred to as the strong back, will recline a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket, and it stays in that position until liftoff. Then at that point, it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. 3 minutes out, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. Same is true on the second stage, about a minute afterwards, at which point the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, as we hear the call that the Falcon 9 is in startup, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and at the same time, the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. The SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch 45 seconds before takeoff. The engine ignition command is issued at T minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite as expected, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release that Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. Once again, currently targeting 11:37 p.m. Eastern, 03:37 UTC, or just about 43 minutes from now. Time now T minus 41 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. As it happens, the Falcon 9 first stage booster that is supporting today's mission has the tail number of B1069 in the SpaceX fleet. Taking a closer look at that first stage, you can see it's got quite a bit of character on it. And that's because it is flying for a 26th time on today's Falcon 9 flight. And that, my friends, is good enough to place it within the category of the Falcon 9 frequent flyers, given the number of flights it's had. And of course, it's been sitting up in the top 5 for a while now, getting ready to enter into a three-way tie for second place with B1063 and B1071. And we've got another tie currently, with both B1077 and B1078 sitting at 22 flights apiece. Taking a look at the Falcon family of rockets bar chart as of the most recent launch, here's where SpaceX stands on the year as compared to years past. 92 missions completed as of the most recent flight, just about tying it with the total number launched in all of 2023. Less than 40 minutes to go now before launch number 93 takes place. SpaceX's goal for the end of the calendar year of 2025 was to reach at least 170 launches, was their stated goal. We'll see how close to that they might get. Those of you watching on the West Coast, of course, we've got another Falcon flight that's coming up tomorrow in the late morning. It is the Starlink 13-4 mission. In between those missions, now tonight and the Starlink mission tomorrow, is the NISAR mission that's launching on a GSLV F-16 rocket that's being launched by the Indian Space Research Organization. This is a joint NASA-ISRO mission. NISAR standing for NASA-ISRO Synthetic Aperture Radar. NASA and ISRO will appropriately also have joint live coverage on that mission. That is set to lift off about 8:10 a.m. Eastern, 12:10 UTC. I also want to congratulate the folks at Gilmore Space for their first launch attempt earlier on today. That was unfortunately unsuccessful. It uh, lifted off the pad, didn't unfortunately get too far, did a little bit of a scoot to the right before crashing back down to Earth, but certainly a notable feat for an orbital rocket to make its first launch attempt. So wish them all the best at getting back to the pad with test flight 2 in the coming future. Speaking of our future, at this point in the countdown, the SpaceX launch director should have made the call on the start of prop load, assuming everything is still progressing towards liftoff at 11:37 p.m. Eastern. Not seeing anything just yet to indicate that that has shifted. But of course, at this point, we're going to be keeping our eyes very keenly trained on the rocket and watch for signs of fueling, which, if the go ahead was given, is set to begin in just about 1 minute. T minus 35 minutes and counting. At this point, SpaceX, if all is continuing to move well, is now fueling its Falcon 9 rocket. Here's what we're going to be looking for at this point in the countdown. If we punch a little bit closer into the base of the rocket's booster, you can see the lettering of the word SpaceX, and just beneath the X, we'll start to see a frost line form and a little bit of vapor in that region of the rocket as well, as the super cold densified liquid oxygen begins flowing on board the booster stage. Thankfully, while there certainly are some heat waves between us and the rocket, it's not quite as bad as it was during the static fire attempts. So hopefully we'll be able to discern if in fact LOX is flowing a little bit faster than we were earlier today. Also, as we're watching the Falcon 9 rocket for signs of fueling, let us know in the live chat if you're going to be watching the skies after this Falcon 9 rocket takes flight, as into the early morning hours of tomorrow morning, July 30th, is when the Southern Delta Aquarid and the Alpha Capricornid meteor showers are going to be peaking. So, should be quite the celestial show if you've got some clear skies in your neck of the woods. If we do catch some nifty photos, we'd love to see them. Be sure to tag us on social media. Once again, you can find us on most platforms just by simply searching for Spaceflight Now. And as we were just discussing, you can see that vapor wisping away off the side of the rocket as the liquid oxygen flows on board the rocket's first stage. This is a good visual indication that SpaceX is in fact fueling its Falcon 9 rocket, which means they are now locked into at least making a launch attempt at the initial time of the window today, 11:37 p.m. Eastern, 03:37 UTC for our friends around the world. Time now, T minus 29 minutes, 36 seconds, and counting. If you're just now joining us, you're watching Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the Starlink 10-29 mission. SpaceX is in the process of fueling its Falcon 9 rocket at Space Launch Complex 40, set for an on-time departure at 11:37 p.m. Eastern, 03:37 UTC. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now, and we're very grateful to have you with us. See, we've got a little more than 1,400 of you watching along with us live with less than 30 minutes on the clock. If you haven't already, you could do us a big solid just by clicking that like button, sharing the stream to allow some more folks to find this live launch coverage before we go ahead and hit that T0 liftoff point. Also want to thank channel member Stephen Frazier for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate that, Stephen. Good to see you tonight. And to our 5 newest gifted members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. And if you haven't already, be sure to thank Stephen in the live chat, and we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership. At this point in the count, just about 30 minutes out, SpaceX is loading that cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels on the Falcon 9's first stage. Same will be true on the second stage in the next few minutes. As SpaceX is preparing to launch this Falcon 9 flight, once again, the booster that is at the base of it all is tail number 1069 in the SpaceX fleet, looking to launch for a 26th time in just about 27 minutes. Let's go ahead and take a moment to talk about the flight history for this booster, where it's been before we go ahead and all see collectively where it's going. Things got rolling with this booster back on December 21st of 2021. That was when it launched the Dragon spacecraft, a cargo Dragon vehicle, on the Commercial Resupply Services number 24 mission for SpaceX, sending up thousands of pounds of science and supplies up to the International Space Station. That was followed by a Starlink mission on August 28th of 2022. That was Starlink 4-23, followed by a launch for Eutelsat. That was Hotbird 13F, lifting off on October 15th of 22. Just shy of 2 months after that, on December 8th, was the launch of the 15th batch of OneWeb satellites for its low Earth orbit constellation. Back to Starlinks for the next one, Starlink 5-3 on February 2nd of 2023. Couple of satellites for one of SpaceX's oldest customers were next on March 17th. Those were SES 18 and 19. And then from there on out, it was Starlinks every single time. Yeah, it's Starlink 5-6 on May 4th, Starlink 5-12 on June 23rd, 6-9 on August 11th, 6-19 on September 30th, 6-28 on November 18th, 6-36 on December 29th, 6-39 on February 25th of last year, 6-47 on April 5th, 6-57 on May 6th, 10-1 on June 8th, 10-9 on July 27th, 8-10 on August 31st, 10-8 on October 26th, 6-66 on November 21st, turning the page, 12-3 on February 4th of this year, 12-21 on March 13th, 6-74 on April 25th, 12-22 on May 24th, and most recently, Starlink 10-23 on June 23rd. And in 24 and a half minutes, we'll see Starlink 10-29 launch 28 Starlink satellites into low Earth orbit. Time now T minus 22 minutes, 37 seconds and counting. We're just a couple minutes away now from the start of the so-called big vent as SpaceX conditions the feed lines of the pad in preparation for second stage liquid oxygen load. As we're awaiting that milestone, want to turn to our live chat for a moment and thank John McNulty for a $2 super chat. Really appreciate that, John. Thank you for your support, sir. Also looking at our chat, I see we've got Aussie Space Girl with us tonight, another one of our moderators. Good to see you, Stephanie. Hope you're doing well. Now T minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds. Coming up on the start of the big vent here. Coming up in just about 20 seconds from now. And there's a good start to the big vent. This venting will last about 4 minutes in total, setting the stage for second stage liquid oxygen load to begin at about T minus 16 minutes. Currently T minus 17 minutes, 17 seconds and counting. Less than a minute remaining on the big vent here before that wraps up. Just under 16 minutes to go. At this point, SpaceX has started loading liquid oxygen on board the rocket's second stage. Twelve and a half minutes remaining on the clock as things stand. Everything at this point seeming to progress well towards a good liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and take a beat to talk about the workhorse vehicle for SpaceX. Falcon 9, which stands at 70 meters or 229 feet in height, has a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet, mostly made up by the rocket's first stage. Again, you're looking at tail number B1069, which is getting ready to fly for a 26th time today. At the base of the first stage are 9 Merlin engines, which burn a rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are black carbon fiber landing legs that will be used to land the first stage on the drone ship. Today, SpaceX is using the vessel called, just read the instructions. Above the first stage is the inner stage. This is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core, which is surrounded by carbon fiber. In that image on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the deployable hypersonic grid fins attached to the inner stage. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back to the atmosphere, tail first like a big old dart heading towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the rocket's second stage, and at first stage main engine cutoff, high-pressure helium is used to release those latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. Also, the second stage engine nozzle is housed safely inside the interstage adapter until the point of stage separation. Speaking of that second stage, the upper stage of the Falcon 9 powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine or an MVAC engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 220,500 pounds of thrust and will be fired twice on today's flight to place the 28 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. Like with the first stage, the MVAC engine also burns liquid oxygen and RP1. Following the deployment of the Starlink satellites, it will ignite one final time for a deorbit burn, driving it back into the atmosphere where it's designed to burn up and help eliminate the risk of creating any unnecessary space debris on this mission. Finally, at the top of the Falcon 9 stack are the payload fairings currently encapsulating the Starlink satellites. The fairing are the fairings are made up of a carbon composite material and stand at 13.1 meters or 43 feet in height and are 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. The two fairing halves will jettison a little bit further downrange from where the booster lands on the drone ship, following atmospheric reentry that will gently splash down to the waters of the Atlantic Ocean under the support of steerable parachutes. Once down in the Atlantic waters, they'll be brought aboard a SpaceX recovery vessel, brought back through Port Canaveral, and then onto the Hangar X site, where they'll be turned around and refurbished, planned for future missions. Got 9 minutes to go before the flight of this particular Falcon 9 rocket. Mentioned this a little bit earlier in the broadcast about where this Falcon 9 is going to be heading once it does leave the pad. But before we go too much further into the countdown, let's go ahead and take a spell to talk about the trajectory for today's mission. Flying on the Starlink 10-29 flight, the Falcon 9 rocket's going to be taking a northeasterly trajectory once it goes ahead and leaves the pad there at Space Launch Complex 40. So for those of you who are in the area of Northeast Florida, up through Georgia, the Carolinas, and on up the East Coast, hopefully you've got some clear skies tonight and you can catch a glimpse of this Falcon 9 rocket as it climbs uphill. Following stage separation, as we mentioned, the first stage booster, B1069, is going to be aiming for a touchdown on that drone ship. Just read the instructions. This is what the fairings look like as they make their way down towards the waters of the Atlantic Ocean. They'll be brought aboard one of these recovery vessels and again brought back into port. just past the bottom of the hour, and we're just past the point in which SpaceX starts the process of the engine chill, flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, and that protects the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. A little more than a minute and a half after liftoff, they will thermally condition the Merlin vacuum engine as well. T-minus 6 minutes and counting. At this point, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Coming up next will be the strong back pressurizing for its retraction away from the Falcon 9 rocket. That's coming up at about T-minus 4.5 minutes. Taking a look at our live chat, want to thank Super Tech Boy for a $2 super chat. Really appreciate that. Asking if we can show the video of the camera track rig. Well, unfortunately, we don't have a live camera to point at our live camera. But if you want an idea of what part of this setup looks like, you can see our friend Pete Karstens with Max Q Productions over on his X account, Karstens Pete. He's posted, oh gosh, at least 2 or 3 videos showing a little behind the scenes of his setup, which is really quite cool.
Strong back retract has started.
As you just heard, teams are pressurizing for a strong back retract. Got good pad level views of the Falcon 9 rocket at Slick 40. Just about 4 minutes remaining on the clock before liftoff of that Falcon 9 rocket. Next up, we'll see the clamp arms. Actually, there you see them now starting to open up just beneath the payload fairings, and the large metal structure behind the rocket from this camera's perspective, the strong back, will soon recline a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. T-minus 3 minutes and counting.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
And with that good call out, we're awaiting a similar call regarding the rocket's second stage LOX tank. That's coming up at about T-minus 2 minutes. Two minutes and counting.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
With that, the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. Seeing some additional venting now. Those are the ground gas closeouts.
Ground gas closeouts.
Good call from SpaceX. This additional venting removes the remaining liquid oxygen from the lines of the pad. Coming up on 1 minute out, we'll hear a call that the Falcon 9 should be in startup.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
And with that, we've got just one more call we're awaiting. That is the SpaceX launch director giving their go for launch, coming in the next few seconds, if all it goes well.
Launch director, go for launch.
And with that, we are less than 40 seconds away from seeing this Falcon 9 take to the skies above Florida. One last reminder, this rocket's flying in a northeasterly trajectory.
T-minus 30 seconds.
20 seconds. 15 seconds.
T-minus 6.
And here we go. In 10, 9, 8,
T-minus 10,
7,
9.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Entered ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 10-29 mission. The Falcon 9 has cleared the towers. Little more than a minute into flight. Rocket approaching max Q.
Max Q.
Good call. Rocket moving through the greatest point of aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Next will be the call that the Merlin vacuum engine is being thermally conditioned.
Stage 2 engine shell.
Good call there. We've now got a few events coming up in fairly rapid succession. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, at about T plus 2 minutes and 26 seconds. That'll be followed by stage separation and then the ignition of that Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage. Payload fairings will be jettisoned just before the 3-minute mark. Sounds like some birds were rather upset with that liftoff. Less than 10 seconds to MECO. MECO.
MECO?
Stage separation.
Stage separation confirmed.
Stage 2 startup.
All good calls, good visuals. Coming up on fairing deployment.
Fairing separation confirmed.
Starlink satellites exposed at this point. We're just about 3.5 minutes into flight. Coming up, the next milestone will be the start of the 3-engine entry burn, which will dramatically slow the vehicle down as it makes its way towards the drone ship. Just read the instructions. The booster view will start in the box in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. You can see the telemetry data that's sandwiched in between the SpaceX onboard camera views. It's on the left, of course. Stage 1. Looks like the booster's going to top out just at about 114
Both vehicles
kilometers.
continue to follow nominal trajectories.
Up touched 115 for just a very short, maybe half a second there. Now making its way down to the drone ship. Just read the instructions. As you heard, both the first and second stages are following nominal trajectories at this point, so all moving according to plan for this mission so far. As we're coming up on 5 minutes into the flight. The entry burn that's coming up here in just a little more than 30 seconds will last a little less than 30 seconds in total.
Stage 1 FTS has safed.
Stage 1 entry burn startup. Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
And with the conclusion of the entry burn, coming up next will be the start of the landing burn, using just the center engine on the Falcon booster. That burn set to begin just a little before the 8-minute mark. All goes well. This Falcon first stage will touch down on the drone ship at about T plus 8 minutes and 23 seconds.
Stage 1 transonic.
Coming up to the start of the landing burn.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing burn. Landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
And a very clean looking landing from that Falcon booster, B-1069, wrapping up its 26th trip to space and back.
Nominal orbit insertion.
With a good call for nominal orbit insertion and the conclusion of this first burn of the upper stage engine, the second stage of the Falcon 9 will now coast until T plus 54 minutes and 15 seconds. There will be a brief 1 second burn. Nice view of the Starlink satellites there. Nice little parting view as SpaceX wraps up its coverage. As I was saying, there will be a 1 second burn to circularize the orbit of the upper stage. And then the Starlink satellites will be deployed at about T plus 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 7 seconds post liftoff. As we're getting our launch replays ready for you, want to take a beat to thank some folks in the live chat real quick. Thanks to that blonde space girl for a $10 super chat. And then another one saying, hopefully see y'all Thursday for Crew 11. We certainly hope to see plenty of you back here for that coverage. As is typical with a crew mission, we'll have our live launch coverage begin about 4 hours before a liftoff with the start of the suit up sequence. Also want to thank Skunk Hogger for a $10 super chat, who says, here's $10 in honor of my newest member of the Yorkie pack named Dirk. Hopefully Dirk is acclimating well to the rest of the pack. I want to thank Yonda Addy for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. Thank you, Yonda. Really appreciate that generosity. And to our 5 newest gifted members, alongside Foop E. Lee, joining us with membership at the pad leader level. Welcome aboard to all of you. We're glad to have you with us. And for those who are gifted memberships, be sure to thank Yonda in the live chat. And we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership beyond the month you were just gifted. Our replays are getting into work right now, so let's go ahead and take a look at the mission stats as they currently stand. With a good liftoff and landing of the booster B-1069, again, that wrapped up its 26th flight. This was SpaceX's 510th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 93rd of the year so far. This was the company's 447th Falcon booster reflight, with the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was the 154th SpaceX orbital launch within the last 365 days. The 269th orbital launch for SpaceX from Space Launch Complex 40, and the 324th overall orbital launch from this pad as well. Here's where our Falcon bar chart now currently stands. Moving on to some recovery stats. This was the 130th good landing on the drone ship. Actually, just read the instructions. This is SpaceX's 391st drone ship landing and the 482nd overall booster landing to date. Finally, with some industry stats, this was the 64th orbital launch from Florida, the 98th from U.S. soil, the 108th from a U.S. rocket company, and the 163rd orbital launch attempt around the world. There have now been 4 orbital launch failures, including the one from Gilmore Space. So here is where our pie chart now currently stands. It's starting to get crowded in this pie chart. But excellent to see lots of nations joining in this list. As we were in the midst of our broadcast here, the folks at Gilmore Space actually posted the higher quality version of the launch from their perspective. So I want to go ahead and roll that video now. This is the first launch of their Eris rocket. You can see following what appeared to be a promising liftoff for a few seconds, the rocket just clears the tower, kind of hovers for a moment or two, and then did not have enough thrust to continue flying, crashes back down to the ground, and marks the end of test flight 1. Of course, this was just a test flight. No super expensive payloads were on board this mission. I believe there was a jar of Vegemite, but other than that, the goal of this mission was just to acquire data. And you can see it looks like one of the engines, as it was starting to make its ascent, did have a little bit of trouble. So that's probably going to have something to do with the reason why it wasn't able to acquire enough thrust. Look at this one more time. The engine that's closest to us, just actually on the right-hand side, you can see it's sort of sputtering a little bit as compared to looks like a cleaner burn from some of the other engines. Of course, Gilmore Space will comb through all the data from this mission and prepare for their second flight. No timeline on when that might happen. And it looks like we've got our replays ready for you all. So let's go ahead and get things started with the press site fixed view from Adam. Now onto the turn basin. P. Carson's track review. A little bit shorter today than on a typical launch, of course, just because there were a number of clouds standing between him and the rocket from his vantage point. Now on to Chuck and Jen. As we continue to watch these launch replays, want to thank channel member Parker Isaacson for a $5 super chat. Thank you, Parker, who says, I'm lucky to be working here the rest of the year building the 39A piping systems. I'm going to try to be active here for each launch. Well, that's very cool. Thanks for joining our broadcast. And good luck with all the work out there. Obviously, lots happening at Pad 39A, not only with the Starlink or the Starship Tower, I should say, which will, of course, eventually launch version 3 Starlink satellites, but also preparing for the future landing pad that'll be needed from 39A. And we close things out with our launch replays by taking a look at Adam's tracker. And that'll go ahead and do it, wrapping us up with our launch replays. One last visual to show you some launch photos, courtesy of our photographer, Michael Kane of the Falcon 9 rocket as it began to make its climb away from pad 40. And one more for you. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wind things down as we've got still quite a busy few days ahead of us, leading up to the big one on Thursday, the launch of the Crew 11 mission from Launch Complex 39A. Falcon 9 rocket ready and waiting, as are the crew. And we've got plenty to do between now and then. So we're going to go ahead and say adieu for now. Want to thank our moderators in the live chat, to Rick Donner on Aussie Space Girl. Appreciate the both of you for helping us out tonight. Also thanks to Cumulus Granatus for helping to answer questions in the live chat. Thanks to our photography team for all their hard work today. To our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young. Thanks to our friends as well, Pete Carstens with Max Q Productions and Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye.